Hi everyone, this is Callie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a really special video showcasing the Pretty Pink Posh Halloween release for 2024. I have so much inspiration to share. This video is going to be a little bit longer, but I hope you enjoy all of it. Before starting a new card, I'll share all the products that I use and then we'll dive right in. For my first card, we'll be using this candy cane shaker die as well as the stitched ghosts, and there's Halloween icons in that smaller stamp set. And then we have the Halloween wreath. We're going to start with the background, so we'll be doing some ink blending, and my ink blending is going to be real soft because it's going to be sitting in the background. I don't want it to take too much away from the shaker card that we're going to be creating. I'm using a light gray for the ghosts on this first layer. There are 3 layers to this stamp set, but because of all the different elements, I try to make all the elements separate, so I'm ink blending multiple colors on each layer. I used a light brown for the pumpkin stems, a pink for the jelly beans, and some yellow on the stars. Then I'll peel that away, and as you can see, it's very soft and light. Next, using the second layer of the stencil, I'm going to be ink blending more stars and the bottom layer of some candy corn that's on this layer. Then I'll ink blend the pumpkins with some orange. The final layer of the stencil set is where all the details are for the pumpkin Halloween face and bats. So we're doing a darker gray, and I'm adding all the details to those stencil bits, and then I'll clean this off because I don't want that dark gray to transfer onto the next color that I'm going to use, which is orange for the center of the candy corn. And then I'll finish up with a yellow because there are a few more stars on this stencil layer. And that finishes our Halloween wreath for the background. So I'll set that aside while we work on the candy corn shaker. The die set is a large die set. It comes in 3 pieces. You die cut a background. You can also choose not to turn it into a shaker. So there are 3 pieces that you can color or die cut from colored cardstock. I went ahead and also used the 3rd die to create that shaker window on another piece that I die cut. And then I also die cut another piece for the acetate to turn this into a shaker window. I'm using some red line tape to adhere paper to acetate. So I love using liquid glue, but anytime I adhere acetate to paper, I always use red line tape or a strong double-sided adhesive. Once I've placed the red line tape all the way around this candy corn exterior, I can go ahead and peel away that red line backing and then add my acetate. Next, to create the shaker wall for this candy corn, I'm going to use some foam strips. These 3D foam strips are perfect for shaker cards, especially when the frame is so sturdy on its own because it's shaped. So I'll go all the way around the exterior of the candy corn, and I'm not going to do the 2 center strips of the candy corn because I want the shaker bits to flow freely between all the 3 different colors or blocks. So once I go all the way around, making sure to secure every bit of the opening, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside so that I can work on the background of the candy corn. And to do so, I'm just going to ink blend these pieces with yellow, orange, and I'll leave the top white. Now you can always die cut this with colored cardstock. Sometimes it's easier for me just to die cut a bunch of pieces in white and then ink blend them. That way I can control the color that goes on there. It's hard to find a color that meets my needs sometimes, so ink blending is my way to go. Then I'll layer these over that backing so that everything is perfectly aligned. Again, I didn't ink blend that top white layer. Now to add the shaker bits, I'm using an old and a new set. The first set is the candy corn glass beads on the left that I'll be adding first. And then the second set is a brand new bead set. It's called the Classic Halloween Glass Beads. This one just adds a little bit of black. And I added that to the shaker window because the walls were up and the beads wouldn't go everywhere. And then I applied the backing to that. So we have a fun shaker, but I made the mistake of not adding some candy corn images in there. So off camera, I did that. So you'll see that here in a little bit. Those candy corn images that I colored off camera are going to be inside there. And I wanted to remind you also that these images are from the Halloween icon set that I shared at the beginning of the video before I started this card. I know you didn't get a chance to see it close up, but there are a lot of great icons on there that are Halloween related that can be on any card as an extra detail or accessory image. In this case, it works great in our candy corn shaker. So there I just ink blended some stitched ghosts from the Stitch Ghost die. And now I'm gonna attempt to put the faces on, and I die cut all of the little pieces and just had them stuck to a piece of purple tape to hold everything together so they didn't get lost. And an added feature on these Stitch Ghosts are these little face dies. And I kept the die cut negatives because it really helps me put everything back into place with perfect positioning. So I placed that face negative onto the ghost where I wanted it to be. The ghosts are kind of slanting a little bit, so I straightened the face while the body was a little bit slanted. I knew where placement was going to be, so I planned ahead of time so I knew where I wanted to put the faces and at what angle. And then I'll add some glue and then inlay those pieces with my Place and Pierce tool. Once the pieces are in place, I can lift away that negative and then we have the perfect placement for those faces. I went ahead and finished the third one off camera, and then I'm using some 3D foam squares to attach these ghosts to my card. That first ghost also uses a little bit of liquid glue where it hangs over the candy corn because I just wanted the bottom to match the height of that candy corn shaker. For the sentiment, I'm using the Halloween corner set. I'm not using any of the images on my card today, but the sentiments are going to be well used. I love the sentiments on this Halloween corner set. I embossed a bunch of those sentiments on some black cardstock using white embossing powder and got them ready for most of my cards for today. So I went ahead and adhered that to this card and then adhered it to a note card, and we have a finished candy corn shaker card. Okay, so I'll set that aside and we'll move on to our second card, which is all about bats. This Batty About You set is a stamp and die combo. I also have a bat shaker and then a scattered bat stencil. Again, to save time before filming, I die cut everything off camera, and I also colored and die cut the images from the Batty About You stamp set. The coloring is super simple, but if you're interested in the color combinations that I used for Copic markers, be sure to check out the blog. I'll have it listed for you, as well as all the cardstock colors that I used too. So as you can see, I'm putting together the bat shaker, and I'm putting it together just like I did on the first card for that candy corn shaker. I used red line tape all the way around and adhered my acetate to the bat frame. Then I used 3D foam strips to work my way all the way around the bat to create a wall for my shaker. For the shaker, I am adding some Halloween magic shaker beads. It's got some purple and black and green in there that's perfect for this bat shaker. This bat shaker also has a bat head and face, so I didn't save the negative for this one, but I thought it was fun to kind of freeform his face and give him a little smirk. So once I have placement where I want it, I'm just using my Place and Pierce tool again to add my face where I want it and to adhere it down. For the background, before I do any stenciling, I'm going to do some ink blending. I have that moon image that I colored from the Batty About You set, so I wanted a yellow glow, and then I added blue all the way around for a soft night sky. And now I'm ready for the scattered bat stencil. I'm using the same ink color as I did on my last card, using charcoal as a dark gray to ink blend on the bats, and I did it really softly again in the background so it doesn't take away from the focal points and colored images on this card. First, I attached my bat shaker. I wanted to make sure that there's plenty of room for him on there, and then I can work with the colored images around him. I added the moon first, and now I'm just adding the trees and the bats on there with some 3D foam squares to add some extra dimension. And then I finished by adding the sentiment strip across the panel, and then I trimmed it as necessary and then added it to a card base. And that finishes our second Batty About You shaker card. All right, so moving on to our third card, we have this wonderful ghost holder die as well as the layered birch tree stencils. I'm going to start by ink blending a dark night sky background. So on a white panel, I'm ink blending blue all the way down, going from dark to light to the bottom of the panel. Then using the first layer of the birch trees, I'm using some opaque grit paste. I love the texture of the grit paste, and because this is opaque white, it's going to go over that blue background beautifully, and then it's going to add some tree texture for these birch tree trunks. Because this is going to take some time to dry, I'm going to set this layer aside, and while it's drying, I'm going to put together my ghost holder die pieces, and then we'll go back and apply our second layer for that layered birch tree stencil. All of these pieces are from the ghost holder die set, and I've die cut them, a few with white cardstock and a few with colored cardstock, and I'm ink blending now just to give everything a bit more interest and color. And when I'm happy with how everything is, I'm going to go ahead and piece it together. This little candy die here has some circular swirl pieces for the center of the wrapper. And so I'll piece those together, and I'll also piece the pumpkin stems onto the pumpkins. And while those are drying with that liquid adhesive, I'm going to put an acrylic block over it just to hold everything down and make sure it's secured in place. Then I'll use this treat bag and tuck it in place for the ghost and use some liquid adhesive to adhere the face as well. So cute, and I love that it's a bigger ghost, and so we have a strong element for the background. To give him a little bit of color to his cheeks, I'm adding some Copic markers in R30 and a dot of color with R22. Now I'm going to return to my background and use that second stencil layer for the birch trees to add the extra details on those birch trees. Because these details are so small, I'm using a sponge applicator to kind of swirl and push the ink in to create the details. And because that background is textured with that grit paste too, this is really going to help apply that ink. So we have such a fun birch background, and then I can go ahead and apply all those sweet die cut elements that I prepared, and I'm attaching everything with 3D foam squares again just to make everything a little bit more dimensional and interesting. To finish, I'll attach this panel to a note card, and then I'll finish with a sentiment from that Halloween corner set that I told you earlier I prepared a bunch of sentiments from. So there's our third card. Moving on to the fourth card, we have the new Spooky Mug Editions die. Now remember, you have to go back and use the winter mug die to get that mug. And then we also have a big Halloween cupcake die. And there's this fun new Upright Greetings Halloween stamp set, and of course a Halloween words stencil. So I'll start with a background on this one, and I'm doing a blend from yellow to pink. So I'll ink blend halfway down with the yellow and then do the same for the pink going upward. And crossing over those colors in the center is going to create a nice blend of orange. And then here we are just doing some straight up paper piecing. I have a bunch of die cuts here that I'll be ink blending. This mug again is from an older set called Winter Mug. So you'll have to add that one to your cart with the rest of your purchase so that you have the whole collection. And just so you're aware, if you don't already know, there are a bunch of die sets that coordinate with this Winter Mug. So be sure to check that out. Pretty Pink Posh has lots of coordinating products that work together with each of their releases. So I continue ink blending here and piecing all of the pieces together. I'm using some very light colors for this card. I'm trying to expand my color palette for Halloween cards that aren't always the dark, purples and greens and blacks. I'm trying to add some fun colors like mint and purple and pinks. So that's what I'm trying to do on this card. And as I piece everything together, these elements are going to be decor for the mug itself. And I should mention that the die cuts are a mixture of die cuts from the big Halloween cupcake and the Spooky Mug editions. So we have a bunch of dies coming together to create this card. I added some rosy cheeks to these little ghosts. Then I'm going to adhere them to the mug to decorate the mug. And then there's also this word boo that I'll adhere down to the bottom of the mug to decorate the mug surface. Now there's always a stirring stick element to the mug dies, and for this particular card it's going to be these little lollipops. So I ink blended them with some pinks and purple, then I'll tuck them into the slit on the mug itself, and then once they're in place I can use some liquid glue to adhere them in place. I want it to be super sturdy, so I'm adhering it to the top flap of the mug as well as the bottom. Then I can set that aside and work on putting my cupcake together. I decided that I wanted to give this cupcake a candy corn color. So I wanted my cupcake liner to have a neutral feel to it. It is stitched with a fun chevron pattern, so I just used a dark gray marker to color block the chevron pattern, and then that'll do for that cupcake liner. Next, I'll ink blend the frosting layer for a candy corn look. Then I'll piece together this fun cupcake, adding the cupcake liner to the cake and then adding the frosting on top of the cake. To decorate this cupcake, I'm using some more candy corn images that I colored from the Halloween Icon stamp and die set. And then I'm going to use some of these fun clay confetti from the Spooktacular mix and decorate my cupcake with them. Okay, so now I'll take these two large elements, the mug and the cupcake, and play with the layout. And when I'm happy with the layout, I'll adhere the cupcake down with liquid adhesive in the background. And then the mug is going to be adhered onto that background with a bit of 3D foam squares. So that'll give the card a bit of dimension since it's being stacked and layered in front of that big cupcake. And then I'll add some extra elements like this spider web, and I'll have this spider hanging down and touching both of these lollipops as if he's scored and found some Halloween treats. Then I'll decorate the rest of the card with all the little elements that I put together from these two fun die sets. To finish, I'm going to apply the Upright Greetings Halloween set. I embossed a greeting over some dark gray cardstock, and I'm going to trim it so that it fits well onto this card. There's a lot going on, so I want to make sure that it looks okay and fits well. Then I'll finish by applying this to a card base, and that completes our fourth card. Last but not least, our fifth card is going to be using two new products. There's the candy bucket die that you can personalize the bucket with any of those faces. Then we have the Build a Monster die. There are 3 different monster bodies and 3 different sets of face and body features that you can interchange. Then I'm using an older candy die set that's going to be great for filling this bucket with. So I went ahead and pieced all those candy pieces together off camera. On camera, I just wanted to show you what this bucket die looks like and how to piece it together. So I die cut the bucket pieces and I'm adhering the backing to the front, and I'm applying the adhesive just on the sides so that I have no issues tucking candy in between those two pieces. Then I'll attach the handle, and then I wanted to make this bucket look like a Frankenstein. So I die cut all of my pieces, the bucket in green, the hair in black, facial features in black, and then the little screws with a silver metallic cardstock. Now I kept the negative for this one so I can align everything perfectly over this bucket. So I'm using the negative again, adding some adhesive where the open areas are, and then putting the die cuts in place by inlaying them and then removing the negative. Then I saved the 2 little screw pieces for the top of his head, and I'm just adhering them in place. Next, I'm going to piece together one of the monsters, and I'm going to give him some little arms and legs. This monster actually comes with bigger arms and legs. The coordinating arms and body parts for the monsters are next to the bodies, but I just wanted to show you that you can interchange them and make your monster unique. So I have little arms and legs on this monster, and he's just super adorable. So I'll finish here with his eyeballs. Once I finish piecing everything together, I'm going to place a piece of cream cardstock on my card base for a nice matting before I set up my die cut pieces on my card. Really quickly before I do that, I took all of those candy pieces that I die cut and pieced together from the Candy Treats die, and once I had them tucked in place, I used some liquid adhesive to hold everything down, and I'm just finalizing it here with the little lollipops in the candy treat bucket, and then I'll add some liquid adhesive all over the back and adhere that to that card that I prepared. Then I'll use some thin 3D foam squares here to apply my monster to the card, and it looks like he made jackpot here with his Frankenstein candy bucket. I finished decorating the card with a few little candy corn paper pieced pieces, and then finished with a sentiment again from the Halloween Corners stamp and die set. Then to finish all of my cards, I'm just adding some white paint highlights using an ultrafine Posca paint pen. And I'll pull all of my cards back on the screen to add all these little details so you can see all the cards again. I took a minute on these stitched ghosts to add some cheeks to them. Then I added some white highlights to those cheeks and moved on to the fourth card. So I'll finish up with these white highlights. As you can see, I had so much fun putting together these 5 cards, and adding those white highlights really brings all the details out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for sticking through all of it with me. If you're still here and hanging in there, I appreciate you for watching, and hope these cards bring a smile to your face and inspire you to create with products from this release. Be sure to check out this fun release now. It's available at Simon Says Stamp. Everything I used will be linked below for your convenience. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, Be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.